From evil poetry skills to red hot cracks, we have it here on Drop Your Buffs, a podcast discussing Australian Survivor. On this episode, we'll be discussing the Australian Survivor episode that aired on Sunday, August the 28th. So if you haven't seen this episode yet and don't want to be spoiled, please leave the Tribal Council area immediately. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already, and if you can, please leave us a review on iTunes. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just go to dropyourbuffs.com for more details. Now, tonight we have a bit of a change in the studio. Craig, my usual co-host, has been medevaced off the island. He's a bit unwell. We aren't sure whether he's coming back, but unfortunately, we have a special co-host tonight, Eliana. How are you, Eliana?
Good, thanks.
Now, you're a bit of a Survivor fan, aren't you?
Yes.
So, just from some of the old US Survivor seasons, do you have any favourites?
Yes, I really like Ty from the most recent American Survivor series.
Yeah, what was he known for? I can't quite remember him. What did he do?
He had a really good sense of humour, and I loved his passion for nature and animals. Mark the chicken.
Oh, Mark the chicken. There you go. Now, just before we get started, I do have a confession to make of my own. I had previously said that Survivor wasn't in HD. As it turns out, all I had to do was rescan my TV. I hadn't done that for a little while. It's on Channel 13 in HD, so sorry about that, Channel 10. And we'll keep going on. Now, they first started talking about on this episode, they had the issue of Pete. And Pete's not well. We don't know exactly what the problem is. He hasn't been eating, hasn't been sleeping very well. And we've known from previous episodes that it looks like he wants to leave the game, which obviously no one wants to happen. So, we aren't sure how this is going to develop, but I did notice his T-shirt that he was wearing. Did you see the T-shirt, Eliana?
Yes, I did.
And what was on that?
It was a zebra.
Yeah, no, apart from that, though, on this at this particular time, he had a different T-shirt on that had some words on it. It said push it. Did you see that? And I just wondered whether that was his, like, it was almost like a bit of a sign that he was going to push himself to try and stay in the game and sort of get through whatever troubles he was going through. Mm-hmm. Now, this is something else I just happened to think of. I thought Pete looked a bit like Thurston Howell III from Gilligan's Island. Now, you won't know what Gilligan's Island is probably, but he's a dead ringer for Thurston Howell III, if you know what I'm talking about. Now, we finally had in this episode, they finally brought out the hidden immunity idols. Now, are you excited about that, Eliana, to finally see the hidden immunity idols?
Yes, it was very exciting. Because
often in the US version, they'll start looking for the hidden immunity idols before they even get clues. You know, the first day on the beach, they're sort of looking already, but we hadn't seen anything about it until just now. So how did that how was that introduced in this episode, Eliana? What did they how did they introduce it in the game?
Well, each tribe got a little message in tree mail saying that two wise people were basically had to go off and find this sign with some.
Yeah, it was a sign that had a difficult choice. What was that choice they had to do?
They had to choose between honesty and deceit. A big bag of beans for the tribe or a smaller bag of beans and a hidden immunity idol.
And that's right, they did. And what did every tribe do?
Every tribe chose deceit.
That's right. I think it's probably because now Survivor's been around for a while. They're all students of the game. They all know how the game of Survivor works, and you have to be a little bit crafty to get ahead in the game. So they've all gone for the clue. Now, they all got the clue, but from what we've seen, they hadn't actually found any idols on this episode at all. So I don't know how much they were looking. It's a bit hard to tell because they didn't really show all that much. But then they had the troubles with trying to explain to try and keep those clues hidden from the other people back in their tribes, didn't they? And that's always the problem. Would you, if you were in that situation, what do you think you would do? Would you choose the big bag of beans, or would you go for the small bag of beans and the clue?
I would think I'll go with the smaller bag of beans, but I wouldn't make up a lie like how some other people did, because that was a really bad decision.
I think it's one of those things where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because it doesn't matter what bag you choose, whether the big bag or the small bag or the clue or not the clue. When you come back to camp, no one's going to believe anything you say. And it doesn't even matter if you're telling the truth. I think that they'll always be skeptical of what you were saying. So I reckon the best thing is just not to be one of the two wise people to go in the first place to make that choice, because it puts you in a bad position.
Well, it depends, because if you went, no one knows. You could find an idle clue they didn't know. It could be useful for them.
That's true. Yeah, it is a double-edged sword. Now then we had the reward challenge. Now the one thing that sort of struck me in the reward challenge, the first part of this was they all got in canoes, didn't they?
Yes.
They were big canoes. Now the thing I find about canoes, it's very visual on TV, is that it's a good indicator of teamwork in the tribe, isn't it? Because with canoes, if you've got a team of people in a canoe, they all have to work together pretty well. They have to work together as a team. If they don't, it's pretty obvious when the canoe starts going around in circles. And then we had the immunity challenge as well. Now, this is something, I'm not sure if you picked up on this, Eliana, but this also involved puzzles again.
Yes.
And you saw a bit of footage before they actually started the challenge where you saw the tribes discussing amongst themselves who was going to be the puzzle makers, didn't they?
Yes.
But I don't think that they normally show that much in the US Survivor, do they? Normally, the challenge just starts and you sort of miss out on that. So I think it was good to see a bit of TV that showed them actually talking about who was going to do it.
Yes.
Do you think that was different? Now, obviously, we know, well, who were the losers in that one, in that challenge, in that final immunity challenge? Of course, it was the usual suspects, Red Aganoa.
Yes.
Lost again.
Losing streak.
That's right. Well, you know what my theory is? You know how this is set in Samoa? Mm-hmm. And the names of the tribes are Samoan beaches. I was thinking maybe Aganoa is actually Samoan for agony, because they're just in constant agony, this tribe.
Yeah.
Now, one of the people in this tribe is Elle. Now, who's Elle, Eliana? Can you fill us in on Elle? What's her background?
She works in the army.
That's right. That's right. Now, the comment that she made about Aganoa I thought was very telling was that she said, too many chiefs. Too many chiefs. And I guess coming from an army background, she's used to a very strong chain of command where there's someone that's definitely in charge and everyone else has to do what they say, and that's how things get done. Mm-hmm. And she's making that comment that there's just too many chiefs in their tribe, and that's why things aren't working. So I can see where she was coming from with that. And then we had Lee, and Lee had a great bit of Aussie lingo in there, which is always great to see for Australian Survivor. He talked about having a red hot crack. I think he was saying that he just wanted people to put their hands up to do things, like whether it was to volunteer to do the puzzles or whatever, and just give things a red hot crack. So it was good to see that. But what I think it showed, though, was what type of person Lee is. How would you describe Lee as a person? Or what type of game, Survivor game, do you think he's playing?
I think he's playing a really hard game, giving it his all, really trying. I think it's great. Well, he's very tough, he's very physical, but in terms of the sort of social aspect, the social and mental aspect of the game, how would you say he's playing that? He's playing it pretty well, I think. He's not really tending to lie to anyone, which is good. He's being an honest player.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was thinking as well, is that he's playing very honestly, very straightforwardly, which is very honourable and so on. But the problem is that doesn't always get you all that far in Survivor, because you have to be a little bit dodgy, a little bit shifty to get somewhere in Survivor. And I'm just worried that even though he's so strong physically, if he keeps playing this absolutely honest game, it might come to hurt him, I think.
But on the other hand, because he's so physical, it would be a really good advantage to their team, because they're losing, but he's very good physically, so that's why I think they're keeping him in the game. Well,
that's right, because, I mean, at this stage, they can't afford to do without him. They have to keep him around while they win in challenges. It's only when they're going to drop their buffs and merge tribes and so on, when it becomes a more individual game, that's when I think that's when he could be in trouble. But at this stage, he is pretty safe because he's the only one that's really keeping them in the game almost. Now we get to tribal council, and who was it? Sort of what was the choice narrowed down to? Because of course it was Red Aganoa that was in the tribal council. Who were the two people they were talking about?
They were talking about the two people who were doing the puzzles in the challenges.
That's right, because it was Kat and Evan. Yeah, it was Kat and Evan were the ones that were doing the puzzle challenge. It's a bit unfair, though. I mean, that just because they didn't get the puzzle right, that then suddenly they're the ones that are potentially going to be voted out. It's a bit unfair.
I don't know, because Kat attempted the puzzle before and she obviously failed at it, or she wasn't that good at it. So why didn't she try doing something else, like doing the more physical part or not really the mental part?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's the problem when you get on the puzzles. If you're really sticking your neck out, aren't you? Because it's
a risk.
It's great if you get it right. If you get it wrong, everyone's going to hate you. Now, I know that I'm talking about Kat versus Evan, but Christy, I thought, is probably not the most physical person on that tribe either. But there was no mention of her being possibly on the chopping block, was there? They weren't really talking about Christy.
No, because
it was just Kat and Evan.
Mm-hmm.
So then, as we know, the votes are read, and it was a pretty clear result. Evan was the person that was voted out, so that's why we have the sad music for Evan, because this is his final night on Survivor. Evan, the drama teacher, we have reached your final curtain call. The tribe has spoken. Okay, moving right along. What have we got? That's right. Have you got any best moments from this episode? I've got one. Best moments? No? Okay, well, one of my favourite moments from the episode was, I don't know if you saw it, but in one of the challenges, Barry doing somersaults. Did you see that? He was sort of running across this netting, and Barry was kind of running along, and then he'd kind of do this somersault, and it was like, what are you doing, Barry?
That was really fun to watch.
But then I remembered, one of the many things he's done, because he was the previous football player. Mm-hmm. He's also a radio host in Cairns, I believe, but he's also a former rodeo clown. So I reckon that's where he gets the acrobatic skills from.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly very entertaining. And now we're up to some tweets. Now, some of the tweets I saw, and this is actually one from the official Australian Survivor Twitter handle. The tweet just said, "Goodbye, Evan, #blindside." Now, would you class that as a blindside though?
No, I saw that coming. I saw that coming.
But it's not so much whether the viewers saw it coming, but it's whether or not the people playing the game, did Evan see it coming? No,
he didn't, sadly.
No, but I thought that it seemed pretty clear, though, in Tribal Council that it was going to be a choice between Kat versus Evan, though, wasn't it? And I think a true blindside is where the person that ends up going home wasn't even discussed in Tribal Council pretty much. Yes. They thought they were totally safe, then got voted off. That's a blindside. Whereas Evan, I don't think he thought he was safe, though, did he?
No, I don't think he was.
And then another tweet I saw was from the Twitter handle at Osher Gunsberg. He says, somewhere in Australia, Des is screaming horrid things at his television watching Kat stuff up that puzzle.
Oh, it's too true.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's basically all we have to talk about this particular Survivor episode. I just had a couple of other things just to bring up that might be interesting. The TV ratings, because now that we've had the first lot of TV ratings from the opening episodes of Survivor from the previous Sunday and Monday, the first episode on the previous Sunday ranked 5th and 6th with about 780,000 viewers, which is a pretty solid result, but it's still behind the block. They got just over 1 million viewers. Then the second episode on Monday ranked 14th with 734,000 viewers, which was behind the block and Zumbo's Just Desserts. So, and this episode that we're talking about tonight ranked 9th with 662,000 viewers. So, so they're solid numbers, but I don't know what Channel 10 were hoping for, whether they were trying to beat the block. You know, it's sort of one of those things. I think one of their targets, though, was to really make a big impact on social media, and they certainly have done that. There's been a lot of interest on Twitter. Hashtag SurvivorAU has been the number one hashtag while the show's going. So I think it has been quite a success in that way. So, you know, I'm sort of quietly hopeful that there'll be a second season, which is good. Now, the other thing I was going to just briefly talk about was I was just thinking about how this Australian Survivor, how they have changed it up a little bit. We start off with 24 castaways over 55 days, and which was a lot more than the US version. And
yes.
And I was just trying to work out why are they changing the formula? Why, you know, it's a proven formula. They've been doing it for years in the US. Why are they changing it? It just seemed like too much of a risk. And so I was doing a bit of research and to see what other countries have done with their versions of Survivor. And did you know that South Africa have done their own version of Survivor that actually went for 5 seasons?
Wow.
5 seasons. So, I mean, the fact that it's gone for 5 seasons must have meant that it was relatively successful. Now, just to break it up for you, in their seasons, they always had 2 tribes. The number of castaways averaged only 17 people.
That's not that many.
It ranged from 14 to 20 people depending on the season. So they had less, certainly less than Australia, and a lot less or a lot fewer days. Their seasons had 27 to 29 days, so they were actually less. They were about 10 days less than the US Survivor. So it's funny how they've gone to the other extreme. They've really downscaled their Survivor, where we've really upscaled our Survivor. So I guess time will tell whether it's been a good ploy for Channel 10. So we'll see how it goes. Well, that is the end of this episode. It's been great talking to you, Eliana. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now we'll be coming back with Monday night's episode pretty soon. And until then, we'll see you later. Bye.